Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews. On today's show, Zach Beutler, CEO of Jungle Driving, and here's a clip with Zach.
It is a huge industry, several billion. I think when we look at what we're doing, what we've already experienced is, it's a lot of times capturing market share is just easy enough as having availability,
right?
Openings.
Right.
The other side is that we are doing a ton of education within the community. A lot of our ads are based on differentiators, and so we're converting some of those kids that might not go get their driver safety because it does look boring or intimidating. It makes this fun off for them.
Right.
Welcome to Franchise Interviews, an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 19 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show. Well, today we're meeting with Zach Beutler, CEO of Jungle Driving. At Jungle Driving, a purpose-driven driver's ed franchise is on a mission to make roads safer for the next generation. Backed by a powerhouse leadership team with deep franchise experience, Jungle Driving has rebuilt its curriculum, added new vehicle-integrated tech, and is now expanding nationwide through franchising. Now let's go right into our interview with Zach Beutler, CEO of Jungle Driving.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in my Omaha office. So I'm in Omaha, Nebraska at my what I call my city office.
Oh, great. Oh, it's fantastic. Okay. And then maybe, you can walk us through the origin of Jungle Driving and, how it's evolved since its first launch in, I think it was 2003, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's really, so there was I've been in franchising all my life, and so I did an acquisition of this brand, and we got that done in December of 2024.
Okay.
And so, when we look at, when I was looking for other concepts, I got introduced to this brand, and I'll never forget, I got introduced, and they said, what about a teen driver's ed concept? And I initially was like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I was like, I really don't like it that much. And but, as I kind of dove into it, the more I got involved, the more I liked it. And so, to kind of give you an idea, I flew up there and did a ride-along with Fred and a young gal driving. And, actually, let me rewind a second here. I'm one of the best parts. So I said, sure, I'll take the first call. So I had a call with Fred, who's the founder, and he started off and said, Zach, me and a partner started this over 20 years ago.
Right.
And my partner just so happened to build the driver safety program for one of the largest package delivery services on earth. He retired right after being awarded, getting a bunch of awards for lowering accidents of over 78% across the country, and convinced me as his next door neighbor that we had to take this methodology to teens in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I thought, that's a pretty good story.
Sure, it is a good story, yeah.
So then I flew up there. I did a ride-along with a young gal for my first experience with Fred as the instructor, and about halfway into it, she says, oh, my gosh, there's a hyena on my butt. And I was like, a what? And then a little bit later, Fred goes, okay, now watch out. There's a crocodile coming up here. Be careful. And I thought, what's going on? So after the drive, I said, Fred, what's a crocodile? He said, well, Jack, that's a car getting ready to pull out of a car parking lot. And if you're not careful, it'll drag you to your death.
Wow.
And so how funny is that? And then I said, okay, what about a hyena? He goes, oh, they're the worst.
Right.
They butt sniff all the other cars. They have road rage. You don't want to be one of them type of drivers.
Right.
And I was hooked ever since then, and the rest is history.
What a great story, Zach. I think I was mentioning to before we started recording early on. My son he recently got his driver's license. So I think we're talking about like 4 weeks now. And so originally when this all started, I started training him. And the problem with that is I'm 40 years older than him. So I was going back to the time where I think I went to driving school, and I was using those techniques that they were teaching me from like 40 years ago, and it just wasn't resonating with him, And when I heard that story, the story you just told, the way we teach children to drive today is so much different, isn't it, than we did 40 years ago, isn't it?
It's so much different. There's so much more distraction.
Right.
I grew up on the farm learning to drive, and
right.
That basically just consists of getting yelled at if you mess something up.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, it's something, and right, with technology and, with something that we didn't have, Zach, I don't think you had was, mobile phones. I mean, when I started driving, there was no such thing as mobile phones, but when you're driving today, oh my God, it seems so dangerous, right? It seems like, half the people are on their mobile phones.
Oh, it's it's funny. Our cars have interior and exterior cameras, and it actually starts to ding red if you're even on your phone. So I even got in when we first got it, and I was guilty of taking a phone call and not really paying attention. And
right. That's something. And it's interesting because your background, Zach, is in franchise. I've researched your background, and so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is what do you like most about franchising?
I've been in franchise my entire life, and I think you can gravitate towards some great people because it takes a long time to build a good reputation.
Yeah.
But you can destroy it so quick. So there's a lot of great people that you get connected to, and everyone's so willing to help everyone.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, everyone is really trying to do the same thing. It's help franchisees make their dreams come true. And what more noble thing than that in business?
So you've taken your experience because you have built and scaled multiple national franchise brands, and maybe we could talk a little bit about so we kind of know what drew you to the opportunity. But what's interesting is it seemed like there was at some point for Jungle Driving you kind of like relaunched. I always call it like a brand over to kind of some extent. Maybe you could talk or describe the brand. Like where's the brand today? If someone hearing for it about the first time, how do you want the brand to be perceived, Zach?
I think we want to be the brand that is the cool kids on the block.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be the brand that's known that we have a superior way of keeping kids safe.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be trusted by not just the community, but also the people that are the connectors at the schools, the parents, et cetera.
Right.
But, and on the other side, we also want to be known as a really awesome business model that can create a lot of profitability with doing something that's really important, which is keeping kids safe on the roads.
What's interesting is how few franchises there are, in your industry, Zach. You know what I mean? I think it's one of the things that certainly help you stand out. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what makes Jungle Driving different from we used a traditional driver's ed program, and how is Jungle Driving different from let's say the traditional driver ed program?
Well, what's funny is as soon as I went up there and I did that visit and I did that ride along, I was hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out and, in franchising, there's certain markets that typically get developed first.
Right, of course.
You think about that, it's North Atlanta, North Dallas, West Houston, South Denver, Austin, Nashville. And I went through like a customer would through all of those. And I was shocked of, number one, how busy it was and how long it would take to actually get signed up someone. You could wait 4 or 6 months in certain markets.
Yes.
And then I went and looked at the competitors, and it's like they went to the DMV, took pictures, and just said, "How do we just create a terrible experience for teenagers?" That's the industry. And so at Jungle, we create a fun, unique curriculum that keeps kids engaged, that they can retain more of what they're being taught, and we're not just focused on what the state minimum requirement is to get your driver's license. We're really focused on what keeps them safe.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because that was our experience, Zach, was we were having trouble just even like booking an appointment. I think we had to wait, I want to say it was probably about 3 months, before we got the appointments. Reading about Jungle Driving, I said, yes. I said, this is it. Finally, what I mean is that someone's coming into the franchise space and you could teach other entrepreneurs, this particular model. I imagine the technology is so much different today from, when I was going to driving school or you were learning to drive. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, the role technology plays in the relaunch and the operation strategy, Zach.
Well, number one, we've implemented a ton of gamification into this business to where we're really focusing on making sure that we keep kids competitive about learning.
Yeah.
For an example, the cars, we're using AI and interior and exterior cameras that all record audio and have GPS.
Right.
As a business perspective, we have national dashboards that rates performance across locations.
Wow.
That brings in data from the call system that we use to the marketing system.
Right.
And then we're also building in, it'll never stop being built essentially, but it's a program that franchisees can use to delegate responsibilities that grow their business business that requires proof of effort.
Okay.
Yard signs is a great example. When you go put out yard signs, you basically take a picture, drop a pin, and then it records all of the yard signs that go out and it plots them on their master map, which all of the activities that they do, basically it'll show them where they've done their activities, and we overlay the signing or the kids that have signed up on top of that.
Right. When I was reading about all of this, Zach, I said, okay, I get it. It seems to me that, and this is where I get you recognize the opportunity and you did something about it, but it really was, I guess maybe it still is in some markets. I guess we can call it an outdated industry, isn't it?
Oh, it is the most fragmented industry that I've experienced, and that's coming from a guy that's been in dumpsters, tree service, paint, and roofing. It is by far one of the most fragmented markets that I've experienced.
And in speaking of the markets, I mean, I don't have the numbers, I don't know the numbers, but maybe what's the current size of the teen driver education market, Zach, and where do you see jungle driving fitting into that particular landscape?
It is a huge industry, several billion. I think when we look at what we're doing, what we've already experienced is it's a lot of times capturing market share is just easy enough as having availability, openings.
Right.
The other side is that we are doing a ton of education within the community. A lot of our ads are based on differentiators, and so we're converting some of those kids that might not go get their driver's safety because it does look boring or intimidating. It makes this a fun option for them.
Right. When you're meeting with a prospective franchisee, Zach, I mean, what's most important to you? Because you've been involved in franchising a long time. So how do you know that they're going to be a good fit for jungle driving? What do you look for? What's most important to you?
Well, in franchising, we're looking for people that obviously are going to own businesses, so they got to have grit. We got to believe that they can overcome obstacles. They have a sense of urgency. For this brand, it's such an experience. We got to find people that have a good personality that we believe are going to, number one, enjoy the experience, but also try to be that have a focus on making sure it is a good experience. Right. And so those are the people that, if you have 4 or 5 calls in a day, that was probably the better call that you had. You enjoyed it. You enjoyed talking to them. And so those type of candidates, when they're business owners, tend to hire people with similar personalities and values to themselves, which is really important.
What about the location factor, Zach? I mean, imagine that, and again, for this type of model, it could be, where it's like a work from home kind of thing, but it doesn't sound like, it sounds like locations is important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a built out classroom where it's all done up almost like a rainforest cafe.
Oh wow!
I think when we look at it, we do believe that getting kids in a space to learn is more effective than virtual. Although we do provide both options.
That's good. And maybe we could talk a little bit about, because, one of the benefits, as you know, Zach, is support and training, for your franchisees. So what kind of support and training does jungle driving franchisees receive?
Well, it all starts the day they sign. We schedule on a pretty comprehensive onboarding process. That includes marketing training on how to go out and build local relationships. That we want them to start right away, to digital education, to curriculum management. We take them through all of that. When they hire instructors, we also do all of the in-house training on the jungle way, as we call it, for instructors.
Right. There was a great story, too, I was reading about you, Zach. I guess it was one of the things that intrigued you about jungle driving. I think it was one of the things that intrigued you also about it in the beginning was like the marketing aspect of it. I can't remember if it was the original founder, like he did like some type of, was it like a direct mailing piece or something like that? And it seemed to be very successful.
When I was up there, I asked Fred, I said, Fred, how did you guys get busy? What did you guys do to get customers? And he leaned back in his chair, and Fred's in his 70s, by the way.
Yeah.
He leans back in his chair and he says, well, Zach, we did a mailer once. And I thought, and I kind of waited there and paused for him to say the next thing, and that's all they've ever done. Now, we hope it's that easy, right? But at the end of the day, we're creating comprehensive digital marketing funnels. We're creating comprehensive local marketing strategies that franchisees get trained on. So we're hitting it from all directions. But we open our Omaha location, and we have experienced a lot of the organic signups seem to just grow week over week.
That's amazing. It's incredible. And so, I mean, you've been involved in franchising for such a long time, Zach. So, I mean, whenever I have the opportunity to have someone like yourself on the show, I have to ask you, because one of the biggest things, one of the biggest questions we've gotten over the years is, because franchising, it seems to keep growing. I mean, when I first got into it, it was like around like 1999. I started studying franchising, and at the time, I think the IFA, they had it was like recorded as, I think there was like 1,200 different systems in the United States. And now today, I hear the numbers up to like 4,000 different systems. So a lot of people, I think they have trouble in the beginning. They say, okay, I want to buy a franchise, but they don't know where to begin. They don't know how to begin. I mean, from everything you've learned with all of your experience, what advice would you give to our listeners then in their quest to buy a franchise, whether it's jungle driving or even any other type of model? How do they start?
I think a lot of people make a mistake of finding something that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the right approach, because you're passionate about something because you get to do it when you want to do it, where you want to do it, and how you want to do it. When you own a business, there's plenty of things you have to do that you don't like to do.
Right.
And so I think I'm a firm believer is that you find a business that is really fragmented, that is highly competitive. Which for me means that there's a large demand for the service or the product that you're looking for, but the people that you're going up against, they're not very sophisticated. And so, I think a decade ago you could have said that was home services, and now I think that's no longer the case. I think it's very sophisticated, that industry now.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's a big thing to look for, which, there's plenty of other options, but I think if you're just Googling best franchises, you're not going to find the best franchises. So I think working with, a professional to help that has a backseat view of up-and-coming brands that are going to be interesting to look at and show you things outside of your comfort zone, I think is a great option.
Right, because, even your type of service, I mean, it may not be something that, an individual originally even thinks about, you know what I mean? Because they might not even think, driving school, there's no such thing as a franchise in driving school. But it was interesting how you even said, is to, the whole passion thing. I've been asking that question for, as I was mentioning to you earlier, like almost 1,000 times, and it's interesting how often the word passion comes up, do something you're passionate about. And, you're kind of saying like the opposite. It's like, no, look at the industry, which I agree with you totally, by the way, is what you just said, is because, I mean, that's what's going to make you happy is the money that you're bringing in. So the franchising is certainly a means to an end, isn't it? It takes care of your family. You can send your kids to school, things of that nature. You know what I mean? So you have to look at those other factors are important, aren't they?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next, Zach? As you're thinking of the future, if you're looking in like a crystal ball, and the crystal ball could be a year, it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, you can pick. But, where do you see jungle driving in the future?
We just awarded our first two brought our first two franchisees on. They both elected to have 3 locations each.
Wow.
I think for our August, I think we have 5 to 6 already confirmed groups. So in my past, growing brands across the country at a relatively quick pace allows you to provide a lot more support and a lot more technology and a lot more data to the system. And so, if I look 2-3 years down the road, I really do believe that we're going to have 200-300 locations open.
Yeah.
And we are working on an internal metric based on some of Fred's data at the founding location that we believe for every 100 kids that we take through our program, we can save X amount of lives.
Right.
And so we're really working on a metric that because we do believe that this is a superior education method for teenagers.
Yeah.
Is that we can actually start to measure how many kids' lives that we believe we've saved, and so that's something internally that we're really working on, and we're pretty close.
And that's the business that you're in, isn't it? If you think about it, it's saving lives. I mean, because what you do is a life skill, and as we were saying earlier, Zach, I think driving is just so much more complicated today, and parents are, I know we're so stressed. I imagine, over time too, it's going to become, there's going to be a lot of referrals for your business too. You know what I mean? Because that's what parents do, don't they? Is they say, okay, where did you send your kid or your child to driving school? You know what I mean? And we'll call that company. But as even the brand becomes to grow, and it's, of course, is more recognized, it's probably going to be a big referral-based business, isn't it?
100%.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. I love the model, Zach. What's the best way, Zach, for our listeners to get more information on jungle driving, whether it's the service itself, or of course even more so the franchise opportunity. But are there any websites you can kind of direct them to, or numbers or emails that they want to kind of like throw out there just for our listeners to get more information?
JuggleDriving.com.
That's easy. Okay. And then there's a franchising section. Because I have been to the website. It's a nice website, by the way, too. And, I'd like to, if it's okay with you, Zach, I'd like to invite you back in the next year or so as you continue to grow, because when I first heard about you and I saw you involved in franchising, I said I had to have you on the show, so it was such a privilege for me to have the chance to finally interview you.
100%. I would absolutely love to be on again. To be honest.
That's fantastic.